Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of the Consulting Success Podcast. I'm your host, Michael Zipursky, and today I am very excited to have Nina Cooke joining us. Nina, welcome.
It's great to be here, Michael.
So Nina, you specialize in working with people on their mindset and really just in the areas of growth and development and overcoming limiting beliefs. You run your own kind of consulting coaching business. You also are a coach in our Clarity Coaching program. And prior to that, you ran a shopping consultancy and you had clients like Goldman Sachs, Ernst & Young, Sky, and various public relations companies. I know that you are a big believer in the power of mindset, as am I. And I'm really excited to have you on the podcast today to talk more about your experiences of mindset, kind of what you've done with clients over the years, how you've seen things play out. Just because I know that mindset is like this area that so many people don't often think about, or if they think about it, they don't maybe pay enough attention to it. Yet it can be just so massive. So I thought what we could do to start off is go back in time a little bit to your career, kind of earlier days. And I'm wondering, at what point, Nina, did you identify the importance of mindset in your own life? Like, when was that, and what were you doing, and the circumstances kind of around that to have the awakening of the mindset or the power of the mindset?
Yeah, it was something I was aware of for a very long time, but I didn't have a name for it. And I remember I went into a bookshop, and it must have been around 1990, 1991. And I wandered into the bookshop, and I came across a section that I'd never come across before. And it said something like mind and body. And I thought, this is interesting. I started picking up the books, and there were books about how to feel better about yourself. And I was absolutely absorbed straight away. And I remember I bought two books. It was Louise Hay, Heal Your Life, and Susan Jeffers, Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway. And I took them home and I devoured these books. I thought, oh my goodness, there's something I can do to help myself to feel better, because I was very, very unconfident. And I grew up always trying to not attract attention, because I thought if I attract attention, then I'll be in trouble, because that was the pattern in my childhood with my older sister. So I thought if I stay under the radar and don't speak up, then no one will notice me and I'll be safe. But the problem was, it had a big impact on my relationships, had a big impact in my work as well. I worked for Time Life Books in the London office. And I'm convinced I would have done much better had I put myself forward, had I spoken up in meetings. I had very good results with them, but I was always very modest about everything I achieved. And I had children. I had Emily in 1995, and I took 10 years off to have children. And I used to watch my young children. They had this lovely confidence. And I was very good at faking confidence, but I never felt it. I was never aligned with it. And I remember thinking, I really need to try and fix this, because I want to be a role model for my children, but be a genuine role model. And I really felt that I can do this, but I didn't know how to do it. But there was another part of me, I thought, I'm not fixable either. There's something about me, I'm missing something that other people have, which gives them that, that likability, and I don't have that bit. So I was always trying to cover up that. And anyway, I started my personal shopping business in 2005, and I managed to land a really great corporate gig with a very big accountancy company in London. And they hired me and my team to go and put on a big pamper evening for their senior female staff and their senior female colleagues. And I took along about 20 team members, and they had stationed themselves, and there were lovely offices, beautiful floor to ceiling glass windows, huge plants that laid on champagne canapes. There was, really lovely buzz in the room. And once all my team was set up and I made sure everyone was okay, then I thought, okay, now is my chance to go and meet up with the senior ladies of the corporate staff and see if I can get some more business. And so I started walking towards them, and I suddenly thought, don't do that. Don't speak to them, because they suddenly realize that you're flawed, that you've got nothing about you. They'll think, well, why have we hired her? We've made a mistake. So anyway, I did a quick sharp left turn. I thought, okay, where can I go for the rest of the evening? And there were a row of semi-dark offices. and I tried one of the doors and it opened. So I just went and sat there for the rest of the evening in the darkness. I didn't even put the light on. And I hid there until it was time to go home. And then I slunk out the office, obviously made sure my team were all okay, they'd packed up. And I didn't say goodbye to anyone from the corporate world. I just went back on the train, sat on the train. And that was the moment, I remember it very, very clearly. I thought, okay, you've blown it again. And you cannot carry on like this. I've got to do something. I've got to find a solution to this. And that's when I had tampered a little bit. I'd had a little bit of a go in the personal development work, but I thought, okay, I'm going to find someone who's going to help me. And I tried lots of different things. I did lots of trainings. I read lots of books. The online world was wonderful because there was so much I could absorb from there. But what I kept finding is, okay, this gives me temporary relief, but I want a permanent relief. I want this to go away completely, so I don't have to keep dealing with it again and again. And I found a guy by chance. My friend connected me, and he said, well, the only reason you don't have any confidence in yourself is because you believe your limiting beliefs are true about you. And I thought, well, okay, I've heard this type of thing before. But anyway, he did something. He did a process with me, which, although I was reluctant to believe it was changing anything within me, I started behaving differently. So, for example, I'd always wanted to do videos and put myself out there online, but always hidden away and been anonymous online. And suddenly I remember one day thinking, I know I'll do a short video, and normally there will be a kickback. Don't do that. It's not safe. You've got nothing to say. People aren't going to be interested. And there was nothing. There was no negative language about it in my head. So I went ahead and did it. It was very grainy. It wasn't great, but I was so proud that I put something out there. It probably got about 5 views, but it didn't matter. And that's when I realized things are different. And when I thought about beliefs like I'm not good enough, or, there's something wrong with me, they didn't resonate with me anymore. And what that did is that freed me up to start thinking in a different way about myself and what I could do and what I could achieve. And anyway, to cut a long story short, I thought, okay, this has worked for me. And I trained with this guy, trained intensively with him. I thought I can help other people who are in the same situation as me. And then transitioning, because at the beginning I thought I could help everyone. Everyone needs this. And then I started niching, and I started working with entrepreneurs, and they really were struggling, not because they didn't have the right strategy or the right marketing team, but they were struggling because they didn't believe in themselves. And when I was able to meet them at that point, when they were beginning to think, okay, so it's not a process in my marketing, I actually need to work on myself first and get myself out of the way. That was a sweet spot where we could start working together. And they were having transformative results. To be transparent, it didn't work 100% of the time for every single client, but it worked for the majority of them. And I was blown away by the results. And that's what I do now. I work with entrepreneurs to help them to think bigger, to dissolve all those negative patterns of behavior which get in their way, which they keep repeating again and again.
Right.
And so once we can do that, then we can start really looking at their goals, and they feel confident that they can achieve their goals.
Well, Nina, let's dig into that, because I mean, there's so much of what you mentioned right now that I think will resonate with everyone at some level, right? We've all, I believe, had an experience where we want to take some action, whether that might be recording a video or going up to meet somebody, like, just the examples that you shared, but we don't, because there's some talk that's going on in our mind that kind of convinces us otherwise. The first thing I want to ask you about this is, some people might say, well, this is the way I've been doing it for so long. Here I am, I'm 4 years old, 50 years old, 60 years old, whatever it might be, or it just feels like it's just so ingrained inside of me. Is it ever too late for somebody to make a shift, to kind of, rid themselves of these shackles that are holding them back, or to kind of open up the possibilities so they can overcome some of these, roadblocks or kind of beliefs, limiting beliefs that are really, keeping them from reaching their full potential?
It's never too late. And I felt that I was stuck, and this was all I could have out of life. And I felt if you cut me open inside, you would see I'm not good enough. it was so ingrained in me. But actually, the process that I use, it takes around 15 to 20 minutes. And clients who've had these beliefs, because many of our beliefs are from childhood. So you could say some of our beliefs are as early as, 2, 3, 4 years onwards. So you can see you've had them all your life, and that's been your reality and your truth that you bought into. But once you can see that it's an absolute lie, and I can confidently say every limiting belief we have about ourselves is a lie, once you can see that, and then you can plant a new truth about yourself that aligns with who you are, then that changes everything. And it's not something that you have to maintain using willpower and affirmations. It's just you make that change deep within you, and you connect with your new truth. You toss out the old stuff that's not working for you, and then you have a new perspective in life. It's like you change the filter through which you see the world, because we know none of us see the world as it truly is. We see the world as a distorted place through what we believe is true. Some of our beliefs are very positive and helpful, and some of them are very unhelpful. So we never, you don't see the world like I see it, but we can change our perspective of the world, of other people, of ourselves, simply by changing what we believe to be true about us. So it's never too late.
Let's say that someone has kind of gone through this process, and I want to dive deeper into the process and also kind of go through some examples that you see coming up with entrepreneurs as well as with consultants and those that are in the consulting industry. But if we kind of come back to this idea that someone has started maybe work through this process, they're feeling like they're maybe dissolving some of these limiting beliefs, or at least being more open to that kind of process they would go through. I believe it might be inevitable, or let's just say that their old selves come back. And take the example of they want to go up and meet somebody, or they want to generate some more business. So they know they need to follow up or make a phone call or send an email. Just they know they need to take some action to create an outcome that they desire, but for whatever reason they don't. Right? They start thinking negative. They think about the worst case scenario and everything that could go wrong, and so then they hold off taking that action. Oftentimes shifting to just doing work that is easier, that they feel is productive, but is actually not creating the outcome that they want. In that moment, when people feel like they're getting pulled back, maybe they've read a whole bunch of books on psychology or mindset. They've spent time at the self-help section at Amazon, Barnes and Noble, whatever bookstore they go to. So they've consumed those books, and I believe probably many people have. Yet they still encounter that hesitation, and it's like that old mindset is still there. What should people do when that happens? What can they tell themselves in that moment? What's kind of the approach, the process, or the steps that they could take so that when that pops up for them, they can still overcome it and keep moving forward?
One of the basic things that I've discovered, and there's many different personal development, gurus, etc., talk about it, and there seems to be an agreement that we make up meanings about everything in life. We have past judgments, we have grievances. We don't, as we said, we don't see things as they really are. So if it's raining, for example, you will have a different meaning about it than I will, depending on whether you like rain, whether you're a farmer and you want your crops to grow, or someone who's having a wedding, outside wedding day. So we all have our meanings that we attach to things. So if someone feels that they're slipping back in their personal development and their mindset is going back to the old way of thinking, then first of all, awareness is key. That they're aware that they're slipping up, and they do something sooner rather than later. Because if that turns into days, weeks, months, etc., then that's going to be a big, long way to come back again. So what I would advise anyone to do is to set up a daily mindset practice. Mindset is not a weekly thing. It is every day for the rest of your life. It doesn't have to be time consuming. It could be as simple as, journaling your thoughts. It could be saying affirmations. It could be meditating, whatever it is. Do something, spend 5-10 minutes at least every day becoming aware of what you're thinking, and knowing and saying to yourself, all I'm doing is I'm not seeing reality. I'm making up a bunch of meanings and negative meanings about stuff, And as soon as you know you're making up those meanings, that's when you can let them go. So I teach my clients something called a peace process, which is completely designed to dissolve the made up meanings that we create in our own heads, the stories, the dramas we create. So it could be about work, it could be about other people, it could be about raising your fees or reaching out to people, networking, whatever it is. We make up all these dramas. Well, they're not going to be interested. I'm going to be disturbing them. I'm not important enough to talk to them. I can't charge that much. No one's going to pay. So these are all meanings we're making up. So there are several processes to dissolve meanings. I use a particular one. But if everyone can say to themselves, okay, I'm making all this stuff up. Let's just get rid of the meanings and then see what I'm looking at. And all you're looking at is maybe making a phone call, or it could be making an offer or writing a proposal or whatever it is. That's all you're looking at. So it's never the thing that you think is causing the suffering. There's a lovely saying, whatever makes us hysterical is historical. So it's never what you think it is. So the task, the activity you're looking at, is just a neutral task.
Yeah. And do you find, that's because people they tend to almost rush through, like, so let's say that they have that they want to take an action. They want to, whatever that action may be. And then that voice comes into their mind of the reasons why they shouldn't take that action. Is it that in that moment, they don't slow things down and try and process what's actually going on? They just kind of take the voice in their head that is telling them, hey, don't take that action, hold off, it's not going to work, all that negative kind of talk. And they just go, okay, and they just kind of accept that as is and not slow things down. Is that what you found? Or is there something else kind of going on when that conversation is popping up in their minds?
Yeah, people don't take time. And there's a huge lack of self-awareness about what we're saying to ourselves. We're running exactly the same conversations in our head every single day, and we don't pay attention to them.
Right.
So we may think, well, I've got to get a lot done. I haven't got time to slow down and listen to what I'm saying to myself. But actually, it'll save you a lot of time, because if you imagine you're putting off a task because you think it's too scary, how much time are you spending talking about it in your head? Versus just doing it? So actually you're wasting an awful lot of time by not slowing down and listening to yourself. So you can write down your thoughts, and all you'll be writing down is a bunch of limiting beliefs. I'm not good enough to do this. I haven't got enough value to charge that much. My competition are better than me. Just write it all down and then say to yourself, these are all meanings I have made up in my head. They've not come from the outside world. They are stories I've been telling myself probably since childhood. Do those stories serve me? If you can't work with someone, then do as much as you can yourself. Do these stories serve me? And then ask yourself a really critical question. Are these meanings 100% true about me? And there will be no one who will be able to say, yes, they're 100% true. You may feel they're 97% true or 99% true. But if you can't get to 100% true, then they're not the truth about you. So it's really challenging yourself and questioning yourself and questioning, what is the truth about me? And not settling for anything less than that. So because I've been doing this and I've really upped it, because I know that it has to be done on a daily basis. Otherwise, my mindset slips, my results slip. And I start spending more time not feeling good. So as soon as I feel any discomfort in my thinking, I will do a process on it, because I'm no longer willing to waste hours with my head stuck down a rabbit hole.
It's so, what you're sharing right now really resonates with me. Two things came up for me right away as you were talking right now. The first is the connection of mindset and everything you just kind of mentioned, and how people approach their marketing. Where, in the Clarity Coaching Program, we have what we call the Marketing Engine 2.0. And the whole idea behind that is to really invest in, delivering value to prospective clients, building relationships with them. And there's all this stuff online that people talk about, in terms of automations, and just, they think like volume over value, right? Get in front of lots of people and automate stuff and just send a whole bunch of messages. And it feels like that's the easy thing to do, right? So it's quote unquote productive, but it's actually not creating a lot of value, because people typically don't get great results when they're just sending out very, very general messaging. But the opposite of that is that you take a little bit more time up front. You get a good strategy, a good system in place. You really figure out how can you deliver great value to people, build relationships. And yes, it might take you a little bit more time up front, but you're going to see better results from it. And it sounds like it's the same when it comes to mindset, is by slowing down. And then my personal example around that, just kind of from what I've experienced, is for me, probably one of the biggest breakthroughs, quote unquote breakthroughs for me on a mindset kind of perspective was a few years back when I started to realize that I would be, around my children or my wife, and all of a sudden I would feel a shift from like positive energy to negative energy, and I would get a little bit more aggressive is not the right word, but like I would feel like a little bit of anger, or there was just something like a negative tone that my mind kind of shifted to. And for many, for a long time, I would just like probably get sucked in by whatever was going on. And then one day I asked myself, like, why am I feeling that way? What's causing that feeling that I'm having right now? And I would realize that the reason I'm feeling a little bit different, I went from feeling great to feeling a little bit disturbed or preoccupied or a little bit on the negative kind of side. Why is that? And I realized that I had just read an email from and something had happened, or my attention shifted to some story or some conversation or some disappointment, and I would then let that take over everything else. And so the moment that I recognized that I just need to stop and I need to process and ask myself, instead of just kind of going down that path, ask myself, what caused the feeling that I'm having right now? And then I go, oh, it's that email and this client issue. And oh, okay, yeah, we're going to take care of that. That's not a problem. That's not a big deal. And then just being able to kind of like cut that off. And then, it made such a difference in how I was able to be present for my family. And also just, again, as you mentioned, not being kind of like taken down this long river of negative thoughts, right? Which is, to me, there's a much better way. So I'm really glad that you kind of brought that up, and hopefully that example I just shared might resonate with some people and also kind of help them to slow things down and catch their selves as they're kind of thinking, in real time.
Yeah, this is so important. Just catching ourselves, being aware, and knowing that you can shift this stuff. And there are so many different strategies and processes for working on your mindset. And try different things out. Some people may enjoy doing one thing or another thing, but often we try different things. We think, well, that didn't work, so this stuff doesn't really work.
Yeah.
But that's not true. There will be a methodology that really feels good to you. So I would encourage all your listeners and viewers just to keep looking and looking. I had to search for quite a long time until I found something that really worked for me. But believe me, it is one of the best things you can do. I know you and I both agree that the foundation of a successful consultancy practice is a solid mindset. Once you've got that in place, then you can grow, because you lose all those. You don't lose all your fears, because it's always a working process.
Sure.
But you can lose big fears, for example, around rejection. There's so many people who are outstanding at what they do, but they don't tell enough people because they think, well, they're going to say no to me, or they're undercharging, or they're not playing a big enough game.
Yeah.
Because they just limit themselves through this fear of, I'm going to get a no, so I'm not going to put myself out there.
Yeah.
I did a survey to my list, and I asked you, what's your biggest challenge to growing your business? And I thought it would be money blocks. The biggest challenge is the fear of marketing and putting yourself out there. But that's what we have to do in order to have a great business. And you can do some clicking stuff and and sell products. But if you want to work with high caliber clients, you have to speak to them and tell them about how good you are, because this is all about relationships and the exchange of value between you and your client. Right. And if you don't feel you can ever have that conversation, then not only are you doing yourself a disservice, but really you're doing a big disservice to your community as well.
Well, let's break that down, in a bit more detail, because you hit on several different kind of mindset blocks or areas that people, just are kind of challenged around, whether it's rejection or increasing fees. You said also, like thinking bigger or kind of acting bigger. And then marketing. Out of all these things, you mentioned that marketing is definitely top of mind for many people. But when you think about the professionals that you've worked with, especially the service-based professionals, and I know you've done lots of work with entrepreneurs, with financial advisors, with consultants now, right, as part of the Clarity program, what stands out for you in terms of like where you really see the most common challenges or the most common kind of areas that tend to hold people back. And maybe we could just kind of explore a couple of these and talk through what is the challenge, what is the limiting belief typically, and then what have you seen in your experience, what the kind of steps that people can take to overcome that challenge so they can create that breakthrough and ultimately the result that they want.
I would say the biggest area, the biggest challenge, there's two words: procrastination and overwhelm.
Okay, let's do each one of those then.
So procrastination is where consultants are typically working hard during the day, but they're doing the busy work, they're doing the stuff around the edges, which isn't making the big difference. So they start projects, but they don't finish them on. They have the shiny object syndrome going on. They're jumping from thing to thing. And what stops them finishing projects is because if they were to finish them, then they would have to make offers and really get out there, and then they may get rejected, and then they would have to deal with all of that. So it's very easy to justify and make excuses to ourselves. Well, I had a really busy day and I got a lot done, but I didn't get around to finishing that project off. I worked with a financial advisor, and he started writing a book. I think it was something like 4 years ago, and he'd written 80% of the book in 2 weeks, 4 years ago. And I said, okay, so what would happen if you were to finish that book off? And he said, well, I'd then have to probably create a funnel around it, and I'd have to get it out there, and terrifying.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is the reason. So if we can really dig down and find out the real reason, what is, and often it is a fear, what is that fear? And it will be about, well, people will judge me. They'll realize I haven't got anything good to say. I'm not as good as my competitors and all of that. So what I do is I like to, around procrastination, overwhelm is very much tied in with procrastination because they feel there are so many things they could do. They can't focus on the one thing, and all these different things need their attention. So they end up not doing any of it. But again, there's an excuse. So if we can strip away those excuses and say, okay, what is really going on here? Let's find the gold. Let's find those limiting beliefs, which are running the show for you. You're making your decisions based on beliefs like, I'm not good enough, I haven't got what it takes, I can't have what I want, I'm a fraud, rejection is scary. If you're building your business and making decisions based on those beliefs, you're not making the best decisions for you and your family.
And where have you seen this idea of fear of failure? Like, so as you're speaking right now, I'm thinking, and I've seen this played out, many times over the years with consultants and consulting firm owners, where you're exactly right. They'll start something, they don't finish it, they put it off. And a big thing that I see is that they're always people are often wanting to make things perfect, right? And the story in their mind is that the more I work on it, the more I refine it and polish it and just get it like perfect and professional in the way that it needs to be, the better the result I'm going to have. And so people spend time, because I've spent the time as well. Like I've done this myself, where I'll get all excited about planning in my mind what success is going to look like. I'm even indulging in the success. Like I can actually taste it when I'm thinking about what it's going to be like in the future, but I'm not taking action at that moment. And I keep kind of playing with it, right? So I remember doing that for a long time. And I know that people are often doing this. But so this idea of like, if I spend time perfecting it and just getting it better and better, right, then I'm going to be more successful. Yet that never ends. And so you never actually take the action. And so that you never actually create success. But it's like that fear of failure, it seems. Or is there something, I guess I'm two parts to this question. One is it fear of failure that's really holding people back? And that's why they're just doing busy work, even though it's not the real value, kind of high priority work. And if it's not that, what is it? But if it is fear of failure, why do you think, like, where does that stem from? Why does it seem to me like that's such a kind of systemic core issue for so many people? Like, is that from childhood that just so many people have it? Or is it from, as we're growing up, like over our careers? What's going on that's having so many people hesitate to take action? And instead just spend so much time trying to just get things right before we actually get out there, which is really the worst thing that we could do.
Yeah, and I know consulting success is very big on taking imperfect action.
We are,
But
yeah.
that is a scary thing to do, because if you put something out there and people think, well, you know, that's not very good, or that you don't get the traction that you want, that can feel very scary. Wanting to make things perfect is another excuse not to put yourself out there, because as we know, things will never be perfect, and it's better 80% done. What question, fear of failure, the flip side of that is fear of success. So I often ask my clients, why do you not want to be more successful? What do you fear if you were more successful? And it tends to be around, well, if I were more successful, I'd have to work harder. Or if I were more successful, I'd have to build a team and have all this responsibility in looking after people. Or maybe I would get to a certain level of success and I'd have to sustain that. And if I fell back, I'd feel terrible about myself. Or if I was very successful, certain people would be upset with me, maybe members of my family, or I'd lose friends, etc. So there is a fear of being more successful. But if you never realize that that's what's going on, if you never look for that reason, you can never deal with it. And therefore you carry on through life just self-sabotaging. An opportunity will show up, you won't show up for it, or you won't deliver something that someone's waiting for. There will be something that will happen that will get in your way. So the fear of failure is feeling humiliated, feeling embarrassed. If you put, if you launch something or you put an offer out, then it doesn't work, then you have to admit, actually, what I've got is not good enough.
Yeah.
The other thing that people do is that they tie their own value in with their offer or their service. And I had a really great conversation with a client the other day, and he's working in a corporate and supposed to do a workshop, and he'd been sitting on it for a long time. And so we talked about why this was happening, and he said, well, because they'll reject me. And I said, it's not about you, you're not for sale. All you're doing is you're putting a offer, a service out there, and they can reject the service, but they can never reject you. So we need to separate who we are from our service. We are not our service. You know, we are so much more than that. So once you can see that and say, well, they cannot reject me because I'm never for sale, but they can say no to my offer, and that's fine. Because in my mind, in my world, rejection doesn't exist. I don't allow anyone to reject me. If someone doesn't want what I have, that's absolutely fine. It's never personal to me.
Yeah. Do you think that kind of connection between like the way that people view what they're offering or putting out there as being part of them, does that increase with age? Like I'm thinking back to when I was younger, and I remember just trying to get jobs during the summer and kind of hustling to make money. I wanted to travel, and I literally would open up the yellow pages, which I don't know in the UK if you have had a similar, right? So you know the big kind of booklet with all different businesses.
Thick book.
Yeah, massive, exactly. And I would just start calling companies like different, landscaping and this and that, just saying, is there any opportunities to work? Any opportunities to work? I don't know if I would do that today. Maybe I would, and I probably should. And I actually do believe that more people should, regardless of their age and regardless of their industry. But because I know that if, as a business owner, if somebody approaches me and shows determination, shows that they're willing to take action, I'm impressed by that. Because I think so often these days people hide behind, they try and take the easy route, even though just picking up the phone or sending an email, like these are things that are not necessarily that hard to do. But I'm wondering, like, as people tend to get older, do we often overcomplicate things? Like, is that something that you've seen in your work as well, that with age we tend to overthink and overcomplicate? And are there any lessons that we can learn from our kids or just our younger selves?
We definitely overthink things, and we talk ourselves out of things all the time. So if we were just to take action on the spontaneity, that time we just think, okay, I'm going to do this, and just do it, we would probably save ourselves a lot of grief and open up lots of opportunities. We do worry about getting a no. Sure. And that stops a lot of us. So you were so brave and courageous to do that, and you probably picked up work. Yeah. I always say to my children, if you don't ask, you don't get in life, because so few people ask, because they think they know what the answer is going to be. And so by putting yourself out there, you really shine, and you learn so much. So if any entrepreneur, any consultant who's listening to this, if you just remove the word rejection from your vocabulary and just say, okay, I can ask, people are entitled to say no, that's absolutely fine. It doesn't mean anything about me and who I am. My value stays intact. And just have that mentality of asking for things. You will be amazed at how many people will say yes.
Yeah.
Because you will stand out from everyone else. So if you do want to be different and be noticed, ask nicely and be okay with a no.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's such powerful advice. And my own experience is that it applies to many aspects beyond business. So you can apply this to your business, but you can also apply this to your life. And just that, don't be afraid to ask. Like, so many people don't ask. They just get in the line, they follow everybody else, right? They do what they think they're supposed to do and what society expects. And what we're talking about here is just do things a little bit differently. Like, don't hold back, try things, ask for things. And the worst case scenario is that you'll learn from that experience, right? And especially as you're saying, Nina, if you don't take it personally, then there's really nothing at all to lose. So I really appreciate you sharing that. So before we wrap up, I'd love to get a couple more questions in. And one of them is, when you look at kind of what you feel contributes most to your performance, to the the value that you create in the world, and just the success that you're able to achieve, what are one or two kind of daily habits or part of your routine that you just kind of keep coming back to, that you really feel plays an important role and has a big impact for you?
There are three things I do. The first thing is I dissolve meanings. As they come up in my mind, I just, whenever I'm aware of it, I will dissolve meanings. If I spend a day dissolving meanings, I have a good day. If I forget, then things start piling up in my mind. And I think, okay, time to stop and just, I'll set my phone timer, say for 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And I will just look at everything around my office and I'll say, I have a meaning about that coffee cup. I've just made up a meaning, but there is no meaning about it. I've got a meaning about my computer. I've made it up. There is no meaning. And I'll spend, say, 3 minutes doing that. And by the time I came to the end of that, my mind is pretty clear. So that's one thing I'll do. I'll dissolve meanings.
And then, sorry, Nina, before you go on, because I'm just intrigued by that process or kind of that way of thinking. So do you do that when you start to feel something come up inside of your mind that you feel is holding you back or it's negative, and then you go through that process? Or are you just doing this regardless of something coming up or not?
I sometimes just say, okay, the beginning of the day, I'm just going to start off on this. Other times I won't do it at the beginning of the day because I'm rushing in the morning.
Yeah.
And then I've got such good self-awareness now when my mindset starts slipping. And so I try and do it as quickly as I can to try and disrupt that pattern before it takes hold and waste part of my day.
Right.
And I do a more in-depth piece process where I dissolve meanings as well. But if I just do that exercise I've shared with you, that helps me to realize I'm just making all of this up.
Right.
That's one thing I do. Another thing that I do is I focus on my goals or my desires, but instead of focusing, so instead of thinking to my goals, I think from my goals. And this is another training and process. Which
what does that mean? Break that down a little bit for everybody.
Means that I believe and own and feel as if I already have my goal now. It's not out there in the future. I have it now. I'm living it now. So although it may feel like there's a timeline, so for example, if I have a desire that I want to be earning a certain amount in a year's time, I will feel and believe and own it as if it's true right now.
Right.
So our subconscious, as you know, listens to a conscious mind, and it says, whatever you're thinking is the truth. Yeah. I'm not checking if it's true in the physical world. I just believe you that it's true. So if I'm in that state of being that, the entrepreneur earning that much, for example,
sure,
then that's what my subconscious believes to be true about me. And then the hows will show up.
Before you go on to number three, I wanted to jump. Sorry to interrupt, Nina, but I was just. It's so interesting that you mentioned this. Literally this morning, I was out for my morning run, and I was listening to an interview with Jay Papasan, who's the co-author of The One Big Thing that he wrote with Gary Keller of Keller Williams Realty. And he talked about Gary Keller, who he's a billionaire. And one of the biggest things that he approaches when it comes to goals is exactly what you're talking about. So when he, decided that he wanted to be a multimillionaire or a billionaire, right, whatever it is, the big thing for him when it comes to goals is figuring out what is the behavior and the mindset and the attitude that person wants to be. So we're using numbers right now, but goals don't have to be financial, right? Your goals could be about your health, they can be about relationships, but just numbers are easy to do this with. So let's just say right now, you have $100,000 net worth, but you want to have $1 million net worth, right? And you might have significantly more, less, doesn't matter. But it's not about thinking through, okay, I'm at 100,000. What do I need to do to get to $1 million? That's one way of doing it. But what I'm hearing from you, and what I just also heard that the Gary Keller uses, is the idea of, okay, if I want to be $1 million, I want to have $1 million net worth. Who do I need to be? Like, what does that look like for me to be that specific person? Or if I want to have 10 million or 100 million or $1 billion, and so then the behaviors and the beliefs of that future state is what you bring into your current state. So for some people might kind of feel or say, that sounds a little bit out there, Nina. I'm not really sure about this, right? Like that's a little bit kind of too fuzzy for me. But I just wanted to add this because this is stuff that very, very successful people all over the world use, and it's a very powerful concept, and one that you may not be, dear listener, you may not be comfortable with, you may not be doing right now. But I really want to encourage you to bring in and apply what Nina is sharing with us today.
Yeah, it's more than acting as if, it's being in the state of. And I upped my game considerably with this, and I had my best month in business ever. And people were just popping up on my calendar, and I thought I was like an observer thinking, this is amazing. And then my limiting beliefs started kicking in. It can't be this easy. It's not going to last. I had to deal with all of that stuff as well. I've significantly improved a relationship using this method. And I've had some small wins along the way. I teach my clients all this. I only work with clients who are willing to do daily mindset work. Yeah. Because this stuff works. But you have to be consistent with it. And then the third thing I do, not always on a daily basis, but when I feel that I've got stuff that I need to work on, and I think, okay, these are limiting beliefs. So it could be around anything. It could be around showing up in a bigger way. It could be around relationships. It could be around fees, whatever it is. I think, okay, I need to sit down and unpack this. I think, okay, so what is this challenge? What is this pattern I keep repeating? And then I dive beneath it to find the limiting beliefs. I write them down. I rate them all out of 10. I think, okay, which one am I going to work on first? And I use exactly the same process I use with my clients or myself. I don't skip any of the steps for myself. I do it as thoroughly as if I was working with a client. And then when I've got rid of those limiting beliefs, I go back to that situation. How am I feeling about it now? If it feels good, if it feels clear, then I move on with my day. So what I've learned to do is to disrupt at the beginning as early as I can, so it doesn't build up and become a big problem for me.
Yeah, love that. All right, and then last question here before we wrap up, Nina. Over the last 6 months or so, one book that you've either read or listened to, could be fiction or nonfiction, that you've just thoroughly enjoyed and that you would recommend others check out.
Oh, I'm looking at my little library here, and I am going to pick out The Jelly Effect by Andy Bounds. He's an English guy. How to make a communication stick. And he is brilliant at cutting through to the important questions that you need to ask your prospect and how to show them the value of what you do. He's lots of common sense, very straightforward, and he just gives brilliant advice.
Fantastic. We will link that up as well in the show notes. Nina, I want to make sure that people can learn more about you and your work. It's ninacooke.co.uk is your website, correct?
Correct.
All right. So we'll have that linked up as well. And yeah, thank you so much for coming on here today. You know how big of a fan I am of the power of mindset. And that's why we're so excited to have you, come and be a coach in the Clarity Coaching Program, and just knowing firsthand, even before you became a coach in our program, I've known you for years, and just the great work that you do and seeing the effect that it can have on people. And you did a presentation for one of our masterminds as well, and I know that people really enjoy that. So thank you, Nina, for coming on and spending some time with us today.
It's been a pleasure, Michael. Thank you so much.